As quilters, we always get excited when we hear fast and easy or quick and simple quilting. That's what we want to get done, especially during this time of year with the holidays keeping everyone so busy. I have just that for you today. I'm Lea Louise from Inspired Quilting by Lea Louise, and this little table topper is just adorable. It's made out of 4 simple blocks using the Curvy Log Cabin pattern, and I love it, and you're going to love it. It is so much fun. And we did some circle quilting on there, so there's a lot here to take a look at. If you don't watch anything else, I really want you to see 2 points in this video. First is how to start circle quilting. I've done some tutorials, and that center circle presents a lot of challenges, and I found a solution that you're going to love. Now, that's going to be at minute 26, so don't forget that. But then also, I want you to see minute 37, because if you make a mistake, like I did, I want to show you how to fix it. Those are 2 really important points that I want to share in this video. And right now, I want to get started, but first, please subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and let's get started. I want to show you this adorable quilt. And here's my Christmas jelly roll pack I'm really excited about. And it's the Kimberbell Cup of Cheer by Maywood Studio. And these are wonderful colors for holiday. They're a little bit different, definitely a modern flair. I love the different colorways that are worked into here. We have our traditional red and green. The red is really pretty with some great greens and turquoise, and the colors are then represented in our candy cane stripe. I like the olive greens. Those are really nice, and these teacups are adorable. But I like the pink in here. That's kind of a fun accent color. And of course, these teacups bring in all the colors from the rest of the collection. We have some white background as well as gray background in the different prints. And these will work great as far as like a low volume or accent. I like that. The teal is just a fun color to add. I like this, and they're in a sort of a subdued print. So this is a tone on tone with the holly berries, candy canes. This is the snowflakes. And so it all works really well together. And what a great contrast. Look at these beautiful navy blue strips. How well that contrasts. So that's really going to make for some interest in whatever it is we make. I haven't quite decided exactly what we're going to do with these because there's so many options. I think there's going to be a lot of different projects, and I'm anxious to show you. So let's go ahead and pull this together and see what we can make. I'm ready for some Christmas quilting. Ho ho ho! For the table topper, I am going to create a Curvy Log Cabin block. Now this is the curve where the background is to the outside, and what I want to do, it's the thicker or the heavier piece with the color to the inside. What I want to do is reverse that, so we're going to have a green circle instead of a curved diamond, and then these 2 pieces are going to go back to back, so it'll be reversible. So as you can see, this block starts with the center, and then we have 3 rows, but they're in different sizes because we want to get that curve in here. So I have my fabrics. I have my 3-ish pieces that I want to go with. I want to stay with green and red, and then I'm going to use the gray and whites for the outer side. Probably not that teal color, but I'm going to take the lighter of these and put these around the outer edge. So let me go ahead and get this started, and I'll show you how this is going to go together. All right, so the first thing we start with is a 2.5-inch square. That's going to be the center of our block. And this is going to be the green, I guess essentially the wreath or the inner circle side. And I'm going to do a 2.5-inch square there, and then 2.5 by 4.5. Now, I had just a short piece, so I just went ahead and sewed that on, and here I just stripped them together. So I will go ahead and actually I have to cut it this way. This works better for me. And I just want to make sure that I'm in the right place. Sometimes these little pinked edges, the zigzag cut, can be a challenge, but just kind of cut to the edge of them
and make it work. It'll kind of come together. So I'm just about off here, so let me go ahead and trim these up. So I leave about 1/8 of an inch in between, and that gives me some trimming space. I prefer doing it this way than cutting each piece because I find it to be a bit quicker, even though I have to come back and trim. And I'll be honest, I don't always trim. Sometimes I will just go ahead and, I'll go ahead and sew it and cut that little bit off after I sew my piece on. But if you're not careful, you can end up being short or long and definitely not square. So just keep that in mind. You always want to press your seams to the outside away from the center. And as I'm sewing, I just finger press them along like this. And then they come out looking beautiful. So round 1, we have a center, and then round 1 has 4 strips. And in this case, we have 2.5, and then we're going to have 1.5. And what I haven't decided is whether I want to use a 1.5 cut, because if I cut 1.5 off of this, I'm only going to have a 1-inch strip. I'm less apt to use that. If I cut this at 1.25, it's going to make this block a little bit smaller, which means it'll be smaller than the piece on the reverse, but I can always add like a little trim around it. And then that way I'll have more of this to use for something else. Does that sound like a cheater method? I'm not sure, but we're going to see how it works. In theory, I think it should work fine. And let's just go ahead, and I need this to be kind of in the 8-inch area so I can cut it. So we have 2.5, and I'm going to cut this in half, which means I'm going to cut it at 1 1/4. And if I line it up on my grid, then I can see, so 1 1/4 here and 1 1/4 there gives me 1 1/4 on that side. That's exactly what I want. Oh, that was interesting. That's a sharp blade. Can you tell I changed it recently? Okay, so now I'm going to use this for my first row. And I'm going to just string them through like I did. Now remember, keep your center in the middle as you're sewing so you know you're going in the right direction. So we sewed here, we sew here, our next row 3 and 4. So you close the block. So let me go ahead and do that. And then I will cut some more fabrics and I'll show you at the machine how we go from here. With our first round complete, we have the wide green and the narrow white around the red center. And this should measure about 5 1/8. These little points may give you a little bit of grief, but the other thing that I sometimes do when I want to measure, I know that this is 2.5. I've taken a 1/4 inch seam, so this should measure 2 1/4. So I'll line my 2 1/4 here, and that should be pretty much straight. If it's protruding out, you can trim it off, but that's just a good double check for you. So now what we're going to do, I have 4 of them. I am going to split them into 2 groups, and let's see. I wanted to, no, actually, you know, I'm going to do it this way. What I was going to do is put 2 blocks with this color and 2 blocks with this color, but what I kind of think I'd like is to switch it up, and I'm going to put reds here and alternate them as I go. That way these longer strips will have a chance to stand out. The center is sort of a neutral piece because they're small. The red will pop, the green sort of recedes, and then my next strips will probably be like this and this is what I'm guessing. Now, the first thing I need to do here though, before I get to that row, is I need to work on row number 2. So I want to put this here, and I'm going to place these in the appropriate places, and to avoid any confusion. So this is going to be our first piece. We always start with the smallest piece right next to the center, and we're going to go this full length, which is going to be 5 1/8. Now, if you chose to cut this strip at 1 1/2 instead of 1 1/4, this will be 5 1/4. If you prefer doing that versus working with the 8ths, that's fine too. Or you can cut it 5 1/4 and just trim on the end. Now, I'm going to sew these on strips, so it's sort of irrelevant other than when I go to finish this round, I'll press it and trim it. I do find on these in particular, most log cabins, it's beneficial to trim them at least every other row to keep them square. But on these, because you have the different size logs, I do it every round just to make sure I'm on track. And that makes sure that the next round then is going to be nice and square. So we have red and candy stripe, or what do I want to say, candy cane stripe, and then we're going to put some gray snowflakes. So there we are. I'm going to go ahead and start sewing these, and I'll show you how I sew this particular round so you get an idea. Now that everything's sort of in place, I can show you how it goes. Okay, so I sewed the strip along the first side of each of the 4 blocks, and I'm just going to trim it. Whoops, sorry, I hit the camera. And see how I leave about 1/8 of an inch there. And I want this nice and flat. That gives me plenty of room to adjust, make sure, whoops, what am I doing there? I found a dull spot in my scissors. That's not a good thing. There we go. Yeah, there seems to be a bad spot there. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is flip this out, finger press it. Now, if you like, if you have like a roller or a presser, I like this one. This works good, but I'll tell you, quite honestly, for small pieces like this, just using my fingernail does a great job. And I will usually do that. So here we are. So we have row 1 finished and the first strip of row 2. I'm going to turn it this way and sew down this side. So this little short, oh wait, I'm switching, that's why. That's a short piece, because we are going to take this piece and do it on the long side. So I'm going to just tuck this over here. And even though I have this extra, I'm going to line this up along with my green points down below so that they're lined up well. And let me just go ahead and make sure that's good and let this be straight. Now when I cut these with the scissors, they're not perfect. I tend to go one way or the other. I mean, without a ruler, that's just what we do. So if that's bothersome to you, then go ahead and, you know, trim in between. And it's just going to make it probably a little cleaner for you. But this works for me. And I'm just going right down the side here. I'll get to my end of my block, and I'm going to just tuck the next one in, leaving, as I said, about 1/8 of an inch. And that's the excess from the previous when I snipped them apart. And you want to make sure that those seams stay towards the outer edge. And I just line my points up to the ones underneath, and then line it up with the straight edge, and do it again. So like I said, I'm making 4 of these, and we're going to put 4 together to make a really pretty little tabletop. Now, I'm just making the one set of 4. You could certainly go for 12 of these because they're quite easy and they go quickly. And then you'll have a table runner, which would be really pretty with these colors. And you can change up the blocks, the strips between the blocks, so you have, you know, a little variety in color. I'm just doing it this way because with just the one block, I don't want it to be too busy. We'll get a lot of nice color in there, but it won't be quite so, you know, chaotic to look at. Not that it's going to be chaotic, because we have some really nice things coming together, but sometimes I get a little worried about putting too much together. And I know that's hard to believe, because when I get to throwing my fat quarters together in quilts, my goodness, anything goes. But this is a more, what do I want to say? I want to say an organized block, but the way it's laid out, it just sort of needs a little bit of continuity, I think. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and press this before I do the next, and I am going to trim this. The reason I'm trimming these is because these are so thin, I don't have the luxury to be off, because then it's going to be wonky. So let me go ahead and I'll press these, and then we'll get started on the last half of round 2. All right, so all my blocks are pressed and trimmed and looking wonderful. So we have our round 1, and of round 2 we have the first 2 strips. So now I'm going to add this one and this one, and they're going to be in the narrow. So I'm just going to add the strip to the top. Let me just run this back here, get that thread out of the way. Okay, and make sure the right side is down. I get those points right up to the edge, and we start our 1/4 inch seam. And so I'm just going to go through all 4 and do this just like we did before. And place this one in. And when you do it all at the same time, that way you're sure you're getting things in the right order and not getting them confused. Now, while I am alternating fabrics on the wider strips, I don't want to do that for the background, because I don't want this to stand out as prominently. By alternating those wider strips, it just adds a little more interest, and I want the background to just be that, be in the background. And we have our 4th one here. I may have taken that a little bit wide at the top, we'll see. Okay, so I'm going to cut these and flip them around. I'll be right back. Here are my 4 blocks with 2 full rounds, and they are looking pretty terrific. I'm going to go ahead now and add a green over here, and then I'll come in after with another green here, and then we'll finish off with the last round, and I'll show you how this goes together. All right, so again, our center, here's 1, 2, 3, 4 is the first round, 1, 2, 3, 4 the second round. So our 3rd round starts right here, always in line with the shortest piece next to the center. If I can get my thread out of the way. So the first thing I'm going to do is I leave a little bit hanging over so I can trim, just in case that's not perfectly straight. And let's see, get it right there. Now I notice with these little zigzag edges, I tend to be taking a larger seam allowance. So my block is coming out a little bit smaller than I would have expected. But as I said, that's okay, as long as your block is, all of your blocks are consistent in size. So trim them between the rows, and then you will be certain to have exactly what you want. So I'm going to get block 2, let's put it right side up. That's an important thing to remember. I almost made a faux pas there. All right, and then we're just going to sew along. So let me finish getting this first strip on the last 2, and then I'll come back and we'll add the second round. And now for the next green block, we're going to, the green strip. I'm going to add that right here. And just sew it through. Now I know I'm going through this pretty quickly, but there is a Christmas tree that I just recently did a tutorial on, and it's using this Curvy Log Cabin block. and it goes into quite a bit of detail as far as how to measure it and get your pieces all put together. So if you want to see a bit more as far as the assembly of the block and trimming it, then that's definitely the one to use, or one to see, because I think that can be really beneficial. It's also in my Christmas playlist, which I'll put links for those up above so that you can find them easily. All right. One more to go, and then I will get these trimmed up, and we will be all set to complete our block, because we have 1, 2, 3. There we are. This is going to be the final round of green. I'll add the final round of gray, and our blocks will be complete and ready to put together. All right, I'll see you on the next round. I am putting on the final strip, and this is the outer gray edge. And one thing I don't think I mentioned is you've probably noticed as I'm sewing these strips on, I'm putting the strip on top of the block instead of the block on top of the strip. And the reason I do that is the way the machine feeds the fabric. The feed dogs underneath pull the fabric along, and sometimes it can do it at a faster rate than the fabric above is moving. And the reason that becomes an issue is, I want to say it while you can hear me, oh, this is a bad spot, is that the piece below can then become a bit wavy because you have more fabric on the bottom than the top. I'm just going to cut this off. That was on a fold and it obviously wasn't straight, but we'll get that trimmed up. So when you're adding narrow pieces, in particular lattices and things like that, I would recommend that you always do them from the top. And especially when it's narrow, it helps you to gauge your seam allowance a little better, because you want to keep a consistent seam allowance on this side. Narrower pieces are going to show up more if they're off than the wider pieces will. And that's simply because, that narrow strip can really, oh, am I going to have enough? Oh, just barely. Look at that. That narrow strip can become pretty predominantly visually if it's off quite a bit, because you'll see how it tapers in. Okay, what did I do here? There we are. How it can taper into the previous row. So let me go ahead and get this finished. We're going to be trimming this up, and our block is complete. Now I need 4 blocks that measure 11.5, and as I said, my seam allowances here were a little bit heavier than they should have been, so I'm going to measure the block, see what it is, if I'm going to get my 11.5 inch. All right, I have my ruler here, and am I going to be at 11.5? No, I'm going to be at 10.5. So I need to add an inch, which means I need an 1.5 inch strip. So when something like this comes up, there's a couple options. I can go ahead and add a strip on both sides, choose on 2 sides, basically 2 adjacent sides. And in this case I would probably do it on the outer edge to create a border. But instead what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to sew this together, and then I'm just going to add one border all the way around and kind of do something a little more festive as far as the prints go. So let me go ahead and come up with that solution, and I'll show you what we're going to do next. Okay, the next step is to sew my 4 blocks together, and I have my first 2 up here, and I'm going to sew these together, and I want to make sure that my little guys, my red centers, are to the outside, and that way I know I have it turned correctly. And I'm just going to get my 1/4 inch seam here. There we go. This one's off just a little bit. Okay. That's one that didn't get trimmed. We'll trim that off. So now I have my green circle with the 4 corners, and I'm going to sew down the middle, and I'll just nest that center seam right there. And line those up. Finish right across here. When I get to this point, I just want to make sure that's lined up well, so our seams look good. And I'm going to go right along here, and this is going to finish our block. And then I'm just going to see what we need to do for a border. Now at this point, you could certainly stop and add a border and be finished. But because I'm backing it with another 4-patch similar to this but in different colors, I need to have them the same size. And so here we go. This is what it's going to look like. I'll show you a larger picture in just a moment. Right now, I'm going to press this, measure it, and then see just what size I need to put around the outer edge. What I'll probably do is just take a 2.5 inch strip and sew it out there, and then I can just trim it down, and that'll make it easy rather than trimming and trimming again. Okay, so here we go. I think that's everything we need to show you at this point. Let me get this pressed and we'll move on to the final step. I'm all set to get some quilting done. Everything's good to go. I have my table topper here. This is the Curvy Log Cabin. Added some extra fabrics around the edges, some extra strips to get it up to the 24 inches that I wanted. And on the back I have the red one that I did. And right now what I'm going to do is some circle quilting. And as you recall, if you saw the circle quilting tutorial I did a couple weeks ago, one of the challenges I had was following the circle. I had drawn a chalk line and I couldn't see it well enough. There wasn't enough contrast and I didn't have markers that would do the trick. So what I thought is I'd go out and I tried to buy the the little garage sale stickers that you can find in different colors, yard sales, things like that. And I couldn't find any. So I just bought some shipping labels. I drew a circle. It's a 1 1/4 inch circle and I cut it out. And what I did is I'm going to start here. This is going to be my top. And I want to get to a 3/4 inch distance from the circle. That's going to be my quilting distance. And so I'm going to come here. I put a 1/2 inch here because I know I want to stay inside of that line. And as I'm sewing, I'll just kind of gradually come around until I get to this point. And if it takes me longer, that's fine. The thing is that it's just going to be a nice, easy curved point. Now, this is adhesive, so it's going to stick on there well. I crossed it, or folded it both directions so I could line these up. I've lined the quilt up on both sides, and you can tell by feeling for the top and bottom that the seams are lined up. And I also made sure they're lined up out here on the edges. So as I'm quilting, it should all stay pretty square. Now, I wouldn't suggest leaving this on the fabric for any length of time. I don't know what kind of adhesive it is. Now, when I did my basting, I used my spray basting. And I suppose I could have cut a piece of paper and used that and just put it on. But this was just easier. And as long as I don't leave this on the fabric a long time, I shouldn't get any residue. And even if I do, it'll wash out. I just don't want to leave it there for any length of time. So I have gotten everything I set up. I've got my walking foot. I have my seam, or excuse me, my stitch length set a little bit longer. I'm at about a 3. And I'm going to start right here, right at that top. And I'm just going to go really slow. And I'm going to take 1 or 2 stitches at a time. And I'm just going to work around like this. And then once you get the first couple stitches, now I did do a practice piece first, and the benefit of that actually is you're allowing your body to, the muscle memory to kind of come back and know what you're doing. When you're doing it the first time, you tend to be just a little awkward, a little clumsy. Excuse me, not unlike that. I bumped the camera right off. This just allowed me to kind of get into the rhythm. And what I find is this hand is stationary, and this is like my pivot point. This hand is the one that does the work, does the moving, does a little bit of the twisting. And, once you find what works for you and how you're most comfortable, then, then you're going to have great success. And that's why I do the practice, because I know I'll be a lot more comfortable doing this as long as I, have a comfort level in doing it. Now you can see how much easier this is to sew around because we have that circle. And even if you sew a little bit into the paper, it's all going to come out. It's not like, it's going to be sewn in place or get stuck on there. But see how nice. Can I lift that? Let me get my seam ripper to lift that a bit. But you can see how nice and smooth that line is. And that's what we want. So let me kind of get everything back in place here. And like I said, I'm just going slow. Once you get past this first round, it does get much quicker because you can move at a little faster pace. It's just when you have a tight turn like this, it's a bit hard to move quickly because you don't get a smooth circle. It's such a tight radius. You need to stay close in to, to keep a good smooth line going. And just move a little as you go. And take your time, work your way through. Now when you start getting to the point where you're coming up here, I'm going to cut that thread off. I didn't pull the bottom one through because I had just loaded the bobbin, so it was already trimmed down to a very short edge. Let's see, can I kind of got a fuzzy piece there. I'll have to cut that after. That's okay. I can't get in there. So I want to make sure that I'm going to come around that curve and line up with that that first stitch that I took. So I'm going to make sure I'm staying right on my curve and keep this little corner out of the way that wants to jump over in front of me. Okay, so we're going to come right here. Now I'm going to go over that same stitching just a few stitches before I start to move my way outward. Okay, so that locks everything in place. Now here's where I'm heading. That's the distance that I ultimately want to be, is 3/4 inch. I think you can see that. I think I had my hands on there enough, it rubbed off a bit. So there's the 3/4, and I did about a 1/2 inch. I probably won't come out that far, but I wanted to give myself a bit of a guide. All right, so I'm going to just take this slow, and I'm going to continue moving and taking my stitching line a bit farther out. Now you don't want to do sharp moves, sharp turns, because that's when you get the the little jogs or the pointy lines, and we don't want to get any pointy lines. We just want to go around nice and smooth. And like I said, that practice ahead of time really makes a difference. Now see how much easier it is to get around once you get past that inner circle. And if you don't hit this spot on, don't worry about it. That's sort of like just the goal where we're heading. Now, once we get to this halfway point, here we go. I'm getting caught up on my guide. So here's my 3/4 from my needle. So if I were to take my ruler right there, there's 3/4. So this is sitting right on that edge, which is great. Now, I'm going to be able to see the stitching well enough, so I'm going to take my circle off and also give you a chance to see. Look at, oh, that's a pretty circle. I am really pleased with how that turned out. And just throw this little guy away. And now I'm just going to let my guide me. Just follow that. And this is where you want to keep your eye on the guide. Going around the circle, you had to keep your eye on the needle, making sure you were hitting that edge right where you needed to. But now your vision is going to be redirected over to this guide here, because that's going to take you around where you want to go. I just noticed something. Did I do something weird over there? What happened? My goodness. I don't know what happened. I'm just sitting here a little shocked because I don't remember doing, I don't know if that's just the way. All right, I'm going to show you how to fix that. All right, so let's go through this. I was obviously talking and not paying attention as I was turning, or I turned the fabric. I don't know, but those things happen. But I'll show you how we're going to fix it. I just want to get around here, get a couple curves in while I'm on a roll. Let's do one more round. I think that's funny. I don't even, remember being a bit off right there. But I sure did something funny. Okay, so we're just going to follow this around. And I'm going to run the guide smoothly around here because obviously I don't want to follow that same line. I want to keep it a nice round circle. And I'm going to come up and meet up here where I know I'm going to go. So let me kind of come back up to the top. And then once I get up there, I'll cut the thread and we'll come back and just keep going. I can pick up the speed. I just keep the fabric moving. I keep the guide on the previous stitching line, and everything's looking wonderful. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and stop here, and I'm going to pull those stitches out, and then we'll back up and I'll show you how to fix that, and we'll get this finished. Oh, this isn't going to take long at all. So knowing how to fix a problem when you're learning a new technique really helps, because it gives you a little more confidence that, oh, if I blow it, I can fix it. And so what I did is on the back side, I just cut these threads between the two spots that I'm going to come back and fix. That got really wobbly. I'm not sure what I was doing at that point. Everything else went well. I did go ahead and finish the quilting, which I'll show you here in a moment. But I just want to pull this out, and I'm going to just use my seam ripper, and I just loosen it up on the back so I can pull these threads out. And I'll just pull that right there. It's kind of hard to do with the gloves on. I should have taken them off. Alright, so I'm just going to pull these out a little at a time. Alright, had to take the gloves off. There we go. And get the thread up from underneath. Now I do want to go to the back side and make sure there's no loose threads. that will get caught up or make a mess. And there's a bit of a thread there. I'll pull that out. So we're good. I can do my full circle from here to here. Okay. So I'll show you how we're going to do this. Get myself lined up. Now I'm going to overlap a little bit. What I do want to do is I'll pull up, that's more loose thread than I thought there was. And I'm going to trim that. Oh, that goes way back there. Okay. And then I'll pull the thread from the bottom up through as well. And then I'll cut it. Now, if it's long enough, you can kind of tuck it aside and hold it over as you're sewing past it. The big thing is you just don't want to get those loops of threads caught up in your stitching. So what I'm going to do is pull, let me take this other glove off so you can see, pull the thread from the bottom to the top. And so when I've done that, see how I get that little loop right there? That's the thread from the back side. And I pull it to the top. And then that way I know I'm not going to get a knot. So I'm just going to leave that there so I can see it. Make sure I sew over it, and then I can trim it after. All right, so let me get my gloves back on. It's funny, I love using these gloves when I'm quilting, but I can't use a seam ripper with it. I can't hit the buttons on the camera. It's digital, and it won't let me do it without my finger. I can't do it with gloves on, so I'm constantly taking them on and off. All right, so here we are. We're going to start right here. I'm going to get nice and close, and I'm going to manually put my needle in. I'm going to put my needle in back probably about 3 stitches. And I'm just going to put it right there. I want to make sure I go right on top of that that thread that's there. Okay, so I'm going to lift the needle up so I can pull the thread from the bottom, and we'll get that loop there. And now I'm just going to pull all this aside. I haven't moved my fabric, so my needle should go right back down where I want it to. Just to make sure. There we go, right there. Okay. So I'm going to start off slow because it is a tight circle, but also because I want to take short stitches and you know, make a good tight stitch here so nothing comes undone. And I'm going to get my guide down. Where did it go? There it is. And I'm not really going to use it a lot because this is the transition where I was going from the 1/2 inch. I can see the lines as long as I take the curve well and don't do anything crazy. So the trick is just to keep moving at a bit of a circle. Now what you can do is watch on this side as well as this side and make sure that that presser foot is kind of evenly lined up there and isn't getting too far off track one way or the other. And then just slowly come around, and as you do, start taking a look at where the end of the thread is that you're going to be meeting up. Okay. What am I doing here? All right, I'm going to put my needle back in. I started to take a little bit of a turn there. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to just adjust my fabric a bit. And I'm just taking it slow. And I'm going to push this out of the way. I want to leave those there because I want them to get caught up with the new stitching. The idea is that the new stitches will go over that and hold them right in place. So we're just going to go around. There we are. Okay, we're catching that on the back. And I'm just going to come past that a little bit. Take my gloves off so we can cut it. And so this over here looks wonderful. Just trim that off. So we're great there. And this just looks so much better. Oh my goodness, I don't know what I was doing to cause that to go so wonky. I've got a little bit of an overlap here where the seam is, but that is so minuscule that it's not going to be seen. So there we go. Let me just trim off the back pieces, the back threads. And I think we pulled everything to the front, so we're okay. And I think it looks wonderful. The curves all came out really nice. One out to the corner. Oh, and I did make a mistake here, but I'm okay with it. For whatever reason, I took a really narrow, I was lining up with the presser foot instead of the guide. Luckily, it's out on the far corner, and it's not going to be noticeable at all. And so I come out all the way to the sides, and I do my circle quilting as far out as I can. And then once I'm done with that, I just come back and I sort of echo quilt in the corner to keep that curve. And I did get it just a tad wider. Instead of putting the guide right on the thread, I maybe 1/8 of an inch just to widen it a bit. But I really like this. I think it looks wonderful. It's going to be great fun on the table. And the fact that it's reversible, I think, makes it kind of fun. It sort of changes the mood a bit. All right, there we are. And now I'll just get this bound and it'll be finished. I love it. I hope you enjoy this. I hope you give it a try. It's a lot of fun. The curvy log cabin pattern is wonderful. And because I did this in the curve and it's sort of like a wreath, I think that this curved quilting, the circle quilting, really enhances that. So I'll show you a picture of this laid out so you can see how it all looks together. All right, I'll show you the finished piece as soon as I get the binding on.
Here's the curvy log cabin side of my table topper. I think it looks wonderful. It turned out about 24 inches square, which is a great size to sit at a table, and I can put, anything in the middle and surround it. And so I have some ideas of what I'm going to do. I just need to get all of those finished so I can put them all together. I really like these colors. I like the way the green and red alternates, and it just really creates a fun look. And the borders work out well. I had to add borders to this side in order to make this match the other side. So let me show you that as well. And you may remember this from the Curvy Log Cabin Christmas tree that I made. This was the alternate block using colors in the opposite direction. And I just used two colors basically. There are two colors in here, but primarily red and white. And then in order not to have too narrow a border on the other side that I showed you, the green side, I made this a little bit wider. So it all came out great. And these colors are just enough. They actually each have a bit of red that they pick up in the center, and then the nice dark green binding works well, and they kind of all work off the same colors together, and I love it. And that circle quilting looks great, and look at that circle in the middle. Oh, do you not love how I showed you how to do that this time around? We figured out the solution, and I'm really excited. All right, there we are. You should be ready now to make your own little table topper, and whether you decide to do the curvy with the prominent color or white, you see how they both look. And you can do a combination of both and make a table runner. Use 3 of these blocks together and that would look wonderful. And just mix it up. It's a lot of fun. I'm so glad you were here with me today. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it very much. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I'd love to have you following along. And don't forget, give me a thumbs up so we can let other quilters know how much fun we're having here. Thank you for being here and have a wonderful, wonderful day.